Welcome to Update 86, this year's roundup of the latest technical developments to the Audi Volkswagen range.
For 1986, many of the innovations first seen on the more expensive models have filtered down through the range and become standard on many more of our vehicles. As we'll see, hydraulic cam followers, the 5-speed gearbox, self-adjusting clutches and four-wheel drive are among the many technical advances now being used much more widely by Audi and Volkswagen.
These many improvements have contributed to longer service intervals and fewer hours of work at each service. It's expected that, on average, less than 3.8 hours of workshop time every 30,000 miles will be spent on routine service work per new vehicle over the next few years.
The 1986 model will require just one visit to the workshop each year, or every 10,000 miles, whichever comes first, for a lubrication and inspection service, with a major service every 20,000 miles. Brake fluid, of course, must still be changed every 2 years at the latest. One or two models will still need a little service work at 10,000 miles, and all diesel engine vehicles will be serviced as before, although they must have the cylinder head torqued down at 1,000 miles.
The general reduction in service time, coupled with the free recovery service, are two prime expressions of Audi Volkswagen's confidence in the technical excellence of their cars. So let's begin with the Polo range, which has been considerably developed and upgraded over the past 2 years. The latest development for the Polo is the new 1.05-litre engine, which along with the new 1.3 is recognizable by the 3 bolts securing the rocker cover and incorporates a number of improvements which reduce maintenance and increase service life.
A newly designed cylinder head of a lightweight alloy construction, equipped with a 5-bearing camshaft and hydraulic cam followers, is now fitted to the engines. Whenever hydraulic cam followers are fitted to a normal inline cylinder engine like this one, you must measure the height of the valve stem in relation to the cylinder head before carrying out a cylinder head overhaul. This is to make sure that when a valve seat is recut, the height of the valve does not interfere with the operation of the hydraulic cam follower. If this measurement is less than prescribed, a new head or valve must be fitted. The pistons have been redesigned to incorporate the combustion chamber in the crown. The pistons protrude above the surface of the block, and so you must take care to ensure that the pistons are drawn down from top dead centre when refitting a cylinder head. There's now an improved oil pump with wide spur gears, which is chain-driven from a crankshaft sprocket. The sump and crankshaft oil seal housing must be removed in order to adjust the tension of the chain. This operation will only be required once during the life of the pump. The thermostat housing is plastic and contains 2 temperature sensors, which are each secured with a circlip. The housing must be removed before taking out the gearbox, otherwise the housing is likely to be damaged. The fuel pump has an operating pushrod which runs in a guide in the cylinder head. A point to note if removing and installing the pump with the rocker cover in position, ensure that the rod does not drop into the head. An idle speed boost system, first seen on the 1.8-litre fuel injection models, has now been incorporated on the 1B3 carburettor, which is normally fitted to this engine. The function of this system is to maintain the idling speed under all engine loads. A speed relay, fitted under the left-hand side of the dash behind the glove box, controls this idle boost valve situated on the bulkhead. Depending on the engine speed at idle, the valve allows a depression to act upon this unit on the carburettor, called the pneumatic idle speed adjuster. Should the engine idle speed fall below approximately 700 RPM, a valve inside this unit allows extra air to bypass the normal air adjustment screw. At roughly 1050 RPM, the speed relay releases the idle boost valve and the engine returns to the predetermined idle speed. The speed relay has an operating range of between approximately 700 to 1050 RPM. So, to check the function of the system, screw in the air volume screw until the engine speed drops to below 700 RPM. At this point, the valve opens and the speed should increase. To adjust the initial idle speed during service, you must isolate the new system. Remove the pipe from the idle boost valve to the carburettor and seal the valve off. Blow down the pipe to the carburettor to ensure that the plunger is fully seated. The basic idle speed can then be adjusted and the pipe refitted. The Polo is also being fitted with a 5-speed gearbox coded 085. It's similar to the 4-speed in construction, but has several improvements to the gear selector linkage. If for any reason the inner selector is moved on its shaft during repair work, this tool, number 3154, is essential to realign it. Otherwise, difficult gear selection will result.
With electronic ignition, the ignition timing doesn't vary during normal running and therefore needs no adjustment. However, to prevent maladjustment, some of our distributors have been fitted with anti-tamper screws and shields to safeguard them. If for any reason the timing does have to be adjusted, such as after engine or distributor repairs, adopt the following procedure. Remove the anti-tamper screw using a center punch and hammer to tap the screw around anti-clockwise. Removing this bolt releases the shield that covers the adjusting nut on the distributor. The timing can then be adjusted in the normal way. After adjustment, the shield must be replaced using a normal 6mm bolt, which you should take care not to over-tighten.
The rotor arm of the Audi 200 Turbo is now secured to the distributor spindle by means of a 3mm Allen screw situated directly under the rotor firing point. Any attempt to remove the rotor arm without loosening this screw will result in damage. The screw serves two purposes. First, it locates and holds the rotor arm tightly in its correct position. Secondly, by using a screw instead of a spring-type fixing, it provides a first-class earth between the speed limiter and the earthing point on the rotor arm. This protects the electronic components in the ignition system from any spike of voltage which could be harmful.
Volkswagen are introducing a major innovation for this year across the model range. All Volkswagens will eventually be available with it, but the first to arrive in this country is the Transporter.
The Volkswagen Transporter has long been synonymous with reliability, low running costs, and up-to-the-minute innovations, the latest of which is a new four-wheel drive concept, Syncro. This is a system which locks the front and rear drives together automatically whenever necessary, by way of a revolutionary viscous coupling.
The coupling is a sealed and self-contained component which is situated in the front final drive and filled completely with a special silicon fluid. The fluid acts upon a number of plates within the housing. These plates are connected alternately to the input and output shafts. As soon as the effective turning speeds of the front and rear axles begin to differ, fluid friction between the plates in the coupling transfers the torque to the front wheels. This happens as soon as one of the wheels begins to spin. However, the front wheels are allowed to run freely as long as the front and rear axles are turning at approximately the same speed. Therefore, the engine torque can be applied up to 100%, the only limiting factor being wheel spin. Power to the front differential is via a prop shaft, which must be aligned precisely to avoid any vibrational or rotational imbalance. The suspension has been uprated in the following ways. Firstly, there is modified front suspension to accommodate the front differential, built onto a subframe. A guard is fitted either side to give adequate protection when traversing uneven ground. The rear suspension has also been redesigned to give a total of 50mm more ground clearance. This has been achieved by lengthening the coil springs and fitting correspondingly uprated shock absorbers on both front and rear axles. The spare wheel has been moved to the rear of the vehicle. Payload is still 1 ton or up to 12 passengers in the bus version. Optional differential locks are available on both front and rear axles and are engaged by pulling a control knob situated in the center console. They're operated pneumatically via a reservoir. The off-road or G gear is selected in the normal way via the gear lever. This is an extremely low gear and is the same ratio as the reverse gear. Note that the front diff lock must only be used on slippery surfaces. The remarkable transporter Syncro can tow up to 2 tons. The Syncro system gives a previously unheard of level of flexibility, both on the smooth and over the rough.
When the new transporter was first introduced with the liquid-cooled Boxer engine, difficulty was experienced in removing all of the air from the cooling system when filling it. The correct method of bleeding the system was to raise the vehicle at the front by 40 centimetres and then follow a series of instructions in the workshop manual. The 1986 model year transporter now has a more streamlined cooling system, which is set lower in the engine compartment. Now, when the system is being bled, the same procedure is adopted, except that you don't have to raise the front of the vehicle. Don't forget, though, to close the bleeder valve on the thermostat housing, or the water will only circulate around the engine, bypassing the radiator, leading to overheating.
During the course of electrical fault finding, 2 main pieces of equipment are normally used: a multimeter and a 12-volt test lamp. However, as more and more electronically controlled components have appeared on our vehicles, such as ABS, idle stabilization, onboard computers and so on, it's been found that tracing faults with a normal 12-volt test lamp can actually damage the internal electronics of the part being checked. As a result, Audi Volkswagen have introduced VAG 1527, a voltage tester with an LED display, which can be used to check DC and AC voltage through a range of approximately 3 to 380 volts. Due to its low current consumption of 1.5 milliamps, it is particularly suitable for fault finding on electronic components. It must be stressed, though, that this crocodile clip, supplied with the tester, may only be used up to 28 volts. In order to avoid damage to the contacts when using VAG 1527, particularly on control units, the connection should be made via the appropriate matching connector from one of the VAG repair kits.
The new Digijet fuel injection system available in the transporter resembles the injection systems of former air-cooled vehicles. So let's take a brief look at the layout of the system.
The movement of the air sensor control flap in the intake airstream influences the opening period of the electronically operated injectors. 2 temperature sensors are required to measure the incoming air temperature and the temperature of the engine coolant. They also influence the opening period of the injectors. The injectors deliver half the required quantity of fuel per crankshaft revolution, the fuel pressure being directly influenced by the inlet manifold pressure. The manifold pressure operates a diaphragm within a pressure regulator connected in the fuel loop. The well-known idle stabilization valve is employed in place of the auxiliary air regulator to control the engine idle speed. The idle stabilization valve is controlled by an electronic system which is completely separate from the one controlling the Digijet fuel system. To switch the Digijet fuel system on, 2 relays are used, and if the starter is not operated within 2 seconds, the fuel pump will switch off until it is. A normal test lamp must not be used on any of the circuits with the control box connected, otherwise the circuitry will be destroyed.
So far, we've seen a number of important changes to the transporter. The big brother of transporters, the LT, has a minor but nonetheless significant addition this year: the bare Viscous cooling fan, which is fitted to all LTs up to 3.5 tons with 5-speed gearboxes.
The fan and oscillation damper are connected together with a viscous fan coupling. The fan is driven by using silicon fluid between 2 plates within the hub, the principle being rather like the Syncro viscous coupling. It operates when the air passing through the radiator heats up and acts on a bimetallic spring which opens a valve, allowing silicon fluid to flow from the storage chamber into the working chamber. However, when the engine is first started from cold, the fan will operate because fluid will have been left in the working chamber from the last time the engine was hot. Great care must therefore be taken when working on this engine. After 1 to 2 minutes of running with high engine revolutions, the fluid will have been pumped back into the storage chamber and the fan will run free. Later, when the heat from the radiator affects the bimetallic spring, the fan will operate again due to the action of the silicon fluid and the plates. If the coolant gauge indicates overheating and all other items of the cooling system are functioning correctly, including unrestricted airflow through the radiator, then the fan must be suspect. It can be tested by blocking off the radiator until the coolant gauge shows overheating. Then uncover the radiator and listen for the fan cutting in as the heat from the radiator affects it. A self-study booklet has been prepared on this subject, giving details of the operation of the viscous fan coupling.
The 1986 Boxer engine will have a modified number 1 main bearing. The thrust surface of the bearing will in future be separate from the bearing itself. The 3 thrust washers for crankshaft axial clearance are, however, still necessary.
Introduced for the 1986 model year is a new method of panel light control for the Audi 200. Unlike previous models, only one dimmer switch is used to control all the various panel light illumination bulbs. For this to be possible, a panel light intensifier unit has been introduced into the circuit. The intensifier is situated in the second additional relay plate behind the carpet in the footwell on the driver's side. The intensifier provides several variable outputs to the panel lights, depending on the position of the dimmer switch. Further introductions for the Audi 200 include a digital clock, which can be adjusted using these 3 buttons for 12 or 24-hour display, or even a stopwatch function. Full instruction for their functions are given in the owner's handbook. With the introduction of this new clock, the onboard computer has been relocated in the instrument cluster.
Volkswagen have come up with a new cylinder head design which extracts even more power from the well-proven GTI engine. The GTI 16 valve has propelled the Golf and Scirocco GTIs into a new and unique class of hot motor car. So, let's have a look at how the engineers have done it.
The new 16-valve engine fitted to the Golf and Scirocco is designed to give greater flexibility with high power output. The layout of the valves, operated by 2 camshafts, affords excellent volumetric efficiency. Turbulence within the combustion chamber is greatly improved by the careful placing of the valves. The centrally mounted spark plug means a much higher thermal efficiency, and so fuel utilization is optimized. The exhaust camshaft is driven by a newly designed toothed belt. All cam lobes are machined on the heel to aid cam follower rotation. The inlet camshaft is driven from the exhaust camshaft by means of a single endless chain. No tensioner is used, and lubrication is achieved by the chain running in an oil trough in the cylinder head. Timing for these 2 chain-driven sprockets is achieved by the marks facing each other. Spark plugs must be removed using the special tool VAG 3122. The retightening torque is most important, as a heat dissipation layer built into the plug will be destroyed if it is over-tightened. Between the rocker cover and cylinder head are 2 reusable neoprene rubber sealing gaskets. Valve clearances are maintained automatically by hydraulically operated cam followers. Care must be taken when removing and refitting the camshaft bearing caps. The cutaway corner must face towards the inlet side of the head. Initial valve timing is set with the engine at TDC to the reference marks on the cam gear and rocker cover casting, and the notch on the crankshaft pulley to the arrow on the pulley cover. This is a critical timing operation and must be set precisely, otherwise the valves will contact the pistons. The toothed belt is slightly narrower than previous belts, and the tooth profile has been changed. The tension of the belt is set at 14 using VW210. A new ignition system is now fitted to this model, which incorporates computerized engine management control. This control box receives information from various sources and determines the degrees of advance required to achieve optimum engine efficiency and performance. A safety device is built into the unit to set the ignition timing to 6 degrees of advance in the case of an electronic malfunction.
All these developments to the technical specifications of the models are a vital part of the advancement of the Audi and Volkswagen marques. As technology continues to progress, the designers and engineers are keen to utilize all the best ideas and create numerous innovations of their own, and so enhance our worldwide reputation for quality and engineering excellence.
The future looks exciting too, with new models coming along bristling with sophisticated systems and ambitious concepts. These will all make the job of the mechanic and technician more challenging and much more rewarding.
Design, innovation, engineering, service, all geared to making Audi and Volkswagen cars as desirable as possible to buy and to own. These principles, inherent in all the vehicles, are at the very center of our franchise.